right, we're back. Thank you, Vincent, for that phone call. We got another caller on hold. We will get to them. Doctor, before we get to this next call, I just got to mention Vincent's call, which was really good because it was kind of his personal trauma, if you will, working around in this environment, which, you know, law enforcement officers, it's a high-stress job, or corrections officers, and then also seeing what these kids have gone through. But he talked a lot about, you know, the state now, the whole juvenile system, and larger, the corrections system, how we're trying to evolve and trying to focus now on rehabilitation for those who can accept it and really grow with it, instead of just punishment and incarceration, which brought me back to what you were saying. It's the bigger picture again, right? Right.
It is the bigger picture. And I think that you said, you know, if we can help people who are in that system believe that it'll work, I think that people will want the rehabilitation, they want the education. But, you know, a lot of them have the experience that maybe I've heard that before and it doesn't work.
So we don't even need to mention the recidivism rates, which have just been awful, that we need to really work on. Okay, that's a whole nother show too, the legal system and how they get out, and, you know, 1 week later they're back in jail, and it's a vicious cycle. All right, let's get to our next caller. Lisa, thank you for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, so I have a couple of questions and perhaps a couple comments. Okay. So I'll start with the comments first. You know, living in Nashville and seeing the violent crimes spike, I feel like, especially in the last, 8 to 10 years. Yep. And just some of them so horrible. When you learn who the perpetrators are, and you learn about the history, they have a history of crime. Yep. They have a history of oftentimes violent crime, and I'm talking about the youth crime. Yeah. They have a history of carjackings. They have a history of arrests. They have a history of stealing guns. And so when we talk about, we need to rehabilitate them, the focus, I feel like, is always on the criminal, never the victim. Okay, and that's fair. As you know, Rhori, there are a couple of so many, but a couple of cases that come to mind are the Asian man that was killed over by Maisha Brown. And she somehow raised her bond. She got out. He was just taking the garbage out, right? Yeah. And he was shot and killed. Innocent man, 70-some years old. Had been in this country for 2 years. There's the nurse last year on her way to work out on 440, shot in a road rage. And did that criminal have a history as well? I can't remember. I can tell you, almost always when we get a name from police and we put it in the system, there's almost always, I shouldn't say, but almost always. And even Maisha Brown, the girl that killed the Asian man, after she somehow bonded out from raising money online, she went out and had a stolen car and was rearrested for car theft and with drugs in the car. Right. This was after she had shot and killed a man. So when we talk about, what should we do? Kyle Yorlitz, the musician that was murdered by teenagers. They all have a history. Right. So, you know what? They should perhaps spend a bit longer in jail. They should. A lot of them seem like they have not learned anything. And if we're talking about what the men on your show talked about, the frontal lobe, how it doesn't become fully developed even in people until they're in their early 20s. I understand that. I've been aware of that. Yeah. But this comes to one of my questions is, has there been any research done on some of the violent offenders that are youth and what their actual IQ is? So if we're talking, just the natural everybody, that their frontal lobe and their decision making is inhibited by just purely their age. If you factor in also that perhaps a lot of these people have honestly a low IQ, violent people, then maybe we would be doing not only the public a service by keeping them incarcerated longer, till they actually can at least have their brain fully developed if they're not working with a whole lot to start with. Okay, so real quick, Lisa, hold on. Let me we only have like 2 minutes left with Dr. Heritage. Let me just ask you this real quick and we'll let him speak. Do you think while these juveniles are incarcerated longer,
should we be providing any kind of mental health services or emotional help services to these kids while they're incarcerated?
I think it depends on the situation.
Okay. Hold on right there. Hold on. I'm sorry. Let's listen in because, Doc, we have about a minute and a half left. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Lisa brings up a good point that, sometimes rehabilitation doesn't happen, or it's not going to happen quickly, right? And so these things take time, and sometimes people do need to spend a little bit more time away from the community to mature or to receive the care or the things that they need. I'm not a corrections officer,
right?
Or
but I will say this: she did bring up something that we hadn't really focused on, and it's important and it's fair. Law-abiding citizens who are working hard and living, obviously, are frightened, and they don't want to be a crime victim. So they want a solution as well. So it is, right. We have to consider that as well, because we see a lot of the recidivism and repeat, and people just scratch their heads and say, why do we keep letting this person out, whether it's a younger person or not? And we got about 10 seconds for you to wrap it. I'm sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
That's okay. I think we need to start solving the problem before it starts.
Proactive.
I think that's proactive is the key. Yeah.
Tough topic, but thank you for joining us. Lisa, sorry to cut you off short. We will wrap things up right after this.